Doom Patrol, episode 2 of season 2. Time Patrol, but time with a Y, because that's how we're spelling it. I have a lot of thoughts about this episode. I think this is the first time in this entirety of the show where I was like, it's okay. I've loved every episode. I didn't really love this one. I liked a lot of it. I think there's some great stuff in here. I was very excited to see Dr. Tyme. I thought that was going to be really fun, and I just kind of liked it. So it's not a bad episode. I don't want people to think I was, like, against it or thought it was bad. I'm just like, this is a great, solid episode to get us where we need to go. There's some great emotional beats that almost broke me because it's that interesting. But some of it was just kind of basic. So let's talk about the best stuff of this episode at the top, and then we'll just kind of go back with the rest of it. So, where we left off in episode 1 of this season, Larry finds out that his son has killed himself. He is 60 years old, and he is a doctor, I think, but he has killed himself, and Larry is going to go attend the funeral of his son. But he doesn't really want to, I don't know if he doesn't want to go, he's just something about it's just like, he feels obligated, like he needs to see his son one last time, which is some really compelling stuff, especially with the character of Larry. Like, nobody else, I really think nobody else on that team has really suffered like Larry has, with the torture, with the loss of his wife and his lover, and just putting everybody aside, and the constant just like barrage that he needs the energy to survive. I think there's some great... Larry is the tortured soul of this show. I love him to death. And seeing that, like, bandaged up glasses wearing thing in like the nice looking suit, my goodness, that was really cool. It looks very Invisible Man. I love it so much. It just looks so good, that suit, man, and this looks great. And you just see he meets his eldest son, Paul, which is just, man, that is some great stuff, because you just see he looks older than we know Larry to look. So you just see like his son sees him next to the coffin, and he's just like, are you one of, like, Gary's weird friends? Because, you know, we learned Gary was kind of this conspirator who believed in all this weird stuff. And that was some really interesting angle, too. Because then you just kind of realize, like, oh, he kind of knows his father was alive. Like, he was led to believe his father died, but he dedicated his life to kind of figuring out what happened to his father. And I think that's very interesting stuff. And once Paul realizes, no, that's my dad, it becomes this other thing completely. Because, you know, Paul was able to move on, right? You just get that sense of that character and that guy. He knew his father was either still around and not worth looking up, or his father was dead, and he was able to move on past that. But just seeing his father there when his brother died was very heart-wrenching to see, and you just be like, I'm sure Gary would have killed himself sooner if he knew it would bring you out of the shadows. And that line, I can't even imagine hearing that from your son. Like, that would be just heart-wrenching and painful. And he does invite Larry to go to the house, to Gary's old house, and just kind of have like a morning there and just talk to some other relatives. But Gary shows up reluctantly. He doesn't talk to anybody, though. He goes into the garage or the barn, and he sees all this flight stuff. And this stuff from like his past that his son, Gary, has collected. Parts of his ship, articles about what happened to Larry Traynor. And this is the scene there you're just like, oh, son of a gun, why'd you do this to me? Why'd you do this to me, Doom Patrol? You just see the letters that his son wrote to him throughout the course of his life, all to his father. And he just picks up letters that were obviously written from a kid, but he didn't know where to mail out the letters to. And they're just like, hey, Dad, I think you're still alive. Mom says you aren't, but I think you're in outer space. I want you to come home. I miss you, Dad, and I love you. And you just like, why are you doing this, Doom Patrol? We don't need to feel these emotions right now. It's very vulnerable stuff. Larry actually just breaks down crying. It's just heart-wrenching to see, because this guy has suffered so much. And just seeing his son spend his whole life looking for him, and he didn't even bother to look for his son. That is very dark and sad, and it hurts to see that. I love Larry. What a great character he is. And this just, I think, amplifies just how much this character has grown. Because in season 1, our season 1 Larry wouldn't have come to his son's funeral. I don't think that at all. And now he's just like, I have to try. I have to see if I still matter in some way to this family. And that's some really great stuff. I love it. And the other part of this episode too, we see Vic leave in the first episode of this season. He's just kind of like sick of being there. So he's going to like this PTSD meeting with all these people. One of them's a vet, and her name, was it Ronnie? I can't remember her name, but they kind of just hit it off, and she kind of calls him out on, like, nobody wants to talk about their trauma when you're recording everything, bro. Like, the point of this is to be vulnerable and defenseless, and you're just up here if your defense is on. And they kind of just hit it. They don't really hit it off per se, but I think they just understand each other because of their experiences. She is way too intellectually smart for him, and not in terms of like, oh, she's a great at computers or something. She just understands who she is in a way that Vic hasn't. She is very confident. She is very proper. She knows who she is when Vic is still struggling to find himself. And they have a great meeting in the bar where they're talking about that. And then they have a great meeting when there's a potential mugger trying to rob Ronnie. And you just see the way they're thinking about. And just the two clashes. Vic is very old school, by the book, call the cops. And she's like, this kid needs a chance to learn from his mistakes. Vic's like, well, he's been in the system before. He goes back, he's going to learn his lesson. But if he keeps going back in the system, how's it going to be hard for him to get out of the system? That's the thing that they were arguing about. And that dynamic, I think, was very interesting. This seems like it's going to be somebody who's going to really help Vic just be human and understand a part of himself. So that could be really fun, too. And let's talk about this. We got to talk about this. So Jane, Rita, Cliff, they are all in the mansion still. And we get a couple just little beats of them, you know. Jane is still struggling to maintain control of her body because everyone in the underground is trying to overtake her. I don't care for the drugs angle. I don't want us to continue that. I don't think we will continue that going forward. But we kind of get like a little moment where we learn that Miranda is the only one who understood what was wrong with Kay or how to help Kay, which is really weird because it makes me think, what's going to happen there? Is Miranda going to come back and take over from Jane? I think so. But we have to figure out a way to make Niles Calder live forever. And how do we do that? We need continuinium. What a dumb, perfectly superhero name for an element. I love it. And in order to get that, we have to go to Dr. Tyme with a wise layer outside of time and space. And in order to get that, we have to recite August 12th, 1980 at some time. Really good stuff. It's just so weird and so Doom Patrol. So our team, sings the chant. They go to this place and they're in this weird roller disco place because apparently humanity peaked at the 1980s roller disco. I don't know if I believe that, but I don't know enough about roller discos to disprove that that's not true. So I would believe it. Do we still have disco roller skating? Do we even have roller skating still? I haven't seen anybody do that in a long time. Sometimes there's the occasional TikToker who's doing that, but not in a roller disco, right? There's no roller rink still, is there? I don't know. I don't know. I'm a young guy. How would I know what's going on out there? The world's in shit right now. I'm not looking. And just Dr. Tyme looks incredible. I'm blown away that they actually made him look like this. Just the goofy helmet with the frickin' clock mustache. It's so good and looks so dumb. And I really like too that Rita's kind of the one that takes charge here. She volunteers to dance with him and just figure out why they're there. And Cliff and Jane are still kind of arguing with each other, we don't know what to do, that kind of stuff. I really like it too. Rita is definitely looking to take control of the team and be the leader, and I really like that because I think all the characters we've seen, it should be her. She should definitely be the one who becomes the leader. That's just who she is. I think that's really great stuff. And through a series of misfortunate events, they accidentally kill Dr. Tyme. That's great. That is so funny. Rita just figures out how to control her arm. She reaches forward, pulls him back. His head explodes. His brain falls out. And that's where the continuinium is being held. But lucky for our savvy little Rita, she figures out how to manipulate time by rotating the clocks on Dr. Tyme's head. Okay, that's great. That's so fun. I love it. And like I said, I didn't like this issue. I didn't like this episode as much as I have previously. I just think the flow, it didn't jump around a lot, but the flow didn't really work. I really was excited to see Dr. Tyme because I just think that's a really goofy and interesting concept. It didn't work for me in the way that previous goofy things have, like Danny or the Beard Hunter. I just think this one just fell a little flat for me. I'm excited to see what happens with Red Jack next week. I know that episode's already out, but not where I am is it out, so I haven't watched it. And I don't know, this one it was okay. So, Doom Patrol Season 2, Episode 2, a fine episode, great moments with Vic and Larry, and an alright subplot with Cliff, Rita, and Jane, and Dr. Tyme. So, if you guys like this episode, that's great, but if you don't, that's fine too. And as always, be sure to check me out on Patreon, Instagram, and Twitter, and you can like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck. Tsunami Studios.